There can be no viable progressive movement without labor strikes. In these urgent times, we can afford no confusion about the current and future role of the progressive army. There can be no polite or reasonable solution to the existential, global, economic, and environmental threat the workers of the world now face. Our current owners have amassed and consolidated power for centuries and will not go down without an epic struggle, the magnitude of which the world has not yet seen. Even though we aspire to achieve a new New Deal, Franklin Delano Roosevelt's original New Deal did not go far enough in liberating U.S. workers. This time, we, the people, need to change the fundamentals of the system. Richard D. Wolff. Great Depression of 1930s. Capitalism collapsed. People fought for and won less inequality. By 1978, capitalists retook control, resumed the system's basic drive to ever greater inequality. This time, people need to change the system. Playing footsie with the current batch of sycophantic politicians on both sides of the political aisle and getting things done in the incremental, controlled opposition style of past lawmakers will not do. Both parties have merely provided cover for each other as they have consistently squeezed U.S. workers into an ever more confining austerity. In remaking our current system, we must remove both parties from power and then take matters of leadership into our own hands. Merely electing a progressive president like Bernie Sanders is not enough. Merely electing a progressive federal Congress and judiciary is not enough. Merely electing progressive state and local politicians is not enough. The only viable and sustainable antidote to entrenched oligarchy is to weaponize the workforce. The workforce must evolve. The workforce must become smart enough to agree on specific demands and then to become organized enough and collectively powerful enough to absolutely insist that those demands be met. The workforce must then be continually vigilant and continue to insist that the system never again devolve into the current malignant morass that cares only about markets and nothing about human workers and their families. Ironically, it may be necessary to circumvent formal labor unions to achieve these objectives. Our current unions are a quagmire of ineptitude and corruption. Union leaders long have been in bed with management, often literally, and may end up being the first foes to vanquish as we become serious about seizing control of our own productivity. Protests and wildcat strikes must become a permanent fixture, not merely a memory of how we achieved our future current liberation. We must form a cohesive movement that includes level-headed leaders from rural, urban, and suburban points of view. We must include young leaders, and we must all commit to end the systemic exploitation of our youth. We must temporarily put aside but not dismiss our quarrels about social issues and agree that economic justice for workers and ecological justice for our planet must continue to be the cement that holds us together as we face down the unjust rulers who have rigged the system for so long. This populist coalition then must be maintained in perpetuity. There must continue to be an unchanging bedrock commitment that workers of every stripe will continue to agree that everyone is deserving of economic justice, including health, education, etc., and that we and future generations of workers must work to maintain a healthy planet. Social media, as flawed as they are, provide places to congregate, share values, and to form strategies. Recent wildcat strikes and protests, here and abroad, have been coordinated via Facebook pages and groups, and such pages and groups probably will continue to be the most potent way for us workers to coordinate our demands. Here is an example of such a gathering place, although it has only 37 members so far. www.facebook.com/groups/greenvestparty. Admittedly, the level of comfort that we workers have indulged in to this point in history will need to be challenged. We have grown complacent. We must collectively and individually stop blaming our elected officials and shoulder the responsibility and the blame for our current plight. We must get out of our comfort zones and into confrontation mode. Our current moment in history may be a blessing in disguise as we find our sense of normalcy dynamited into oblivion. For the sake of future generations, what we have allowed to happen to this point must never be allowed to be repeated. We must dig down and find the courageous and stubborn streak that has allowed past generations of workers to rise up and throw off tyranny and there's not much time left. The ship is sinking. There's talk of forming a May Day general strike on May 1st, 2020. This strike, if it gets off the ground, will include work stoppages, work absences, foregoing rent, mortgage payments, the cessation of credit cards, student loan payments, and so forth. I have proposed two principal demands. Number one, Congress must pass legislation to enact emergency monthly payments of $2,000 to get workers through the economic crisis that most of us face. And number two, Congress must institute permanent single-payer Medicare for all. If we achieve those two, then there are many future demands to consider. Here is a place to discuss a May 1st, 2020 general strike. cooperationjackson.org, a call to action towards a general strike to end the COVID-19 crisis and create a new world. If you agree with the general thrust of this article, please share it around. I will continue to publish articles here on Medium and will continue to discuss labor issues on YouTube. Let's stay in touch.